So James Tanner, we're so grateful to have you here today, presenting today on how to record a genealogical source. James is known all across the country and maybe any other countries as a presenter and longtime teacher of genealogy and family history. And so we're grateful to have you here again today. And I'll turn the time over to you, James.
Okay, here we go. Well, we're going to talk today about recording genealogical sources. I'll remind everyone that these are also recorded and published to our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. You might see also that it's called BYU Family Search Library on some parts of Google searches right now, so bear that in mind. We're going to, basically, I'm showing here a source list from the FamilySearch.org website. And this is kind of the development, it's the evolution of the source list. And I suspect that it'll continue to evolve a little bit. One of the things that makes this one interesting now is that you are asked to enter a date for the entry. And the question that immediately comes up is which date? The date you found it, the date that it's published, or the date of the original document. And what we'd like to have is the date of the original document. So that's the one that you should put in. So we'll get right on. Just kind of to clarify, and this may be something very basic, but genealogy is the history of an individual or family. And what we're doing when we're going out and getting genealogical research is we're developing information about families and individuals. That's kind of a different goal than history in general that tells nations, states, communities, all those kinds of histories. And to some extent, genealogists over the years have actually written a lot of histories. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of what we call surname books. They can be descendancy books, meaning going back to a famous or original person, immigrant, or someone who was outstanding in the family and showing all their descendants. And then, or they can go the other way. They can go showing someone's ancestry going back a certain number of generations or clear back to Adam if they try to do that. So basically what you have is a lot of different kinds of interests and a lot of different kinds of levels of people being involved. But generally speaking, we're all focusing on individuals and families. So the next probably important thing is that when we do this, the purpose of doing genealogy is to discover the family's history or the individual history through researching historical documents. And when we do that, then we're entering into the same activities that are common for all history types. Anybody who's involved in reading about, learning about, writing about, or teaching history has the same challenge. That is, we need to go back into what we call original source documents, documents that are made at or time of an event that occurred in somebody's life or during some time period that was important. And in the case of genealogy, this is an example of a United States Census record for 1920, and it happens to be from a little place in Arizona called St. Joseph, but it's now called Joseph City. And it has a couple of my ancestors on here, my great-grandfather, some of my great-uncles, a few cousins, and that's all on this one sheet of the genealogy. So depending on the size of the community, or you may have one, may never see another relative on the same area, or you may see most of your family in the same exact spot. So understanding this, that how we get back to the information about our family are these historical documents. And so they become the method, the way that we develop a history and get accurate information. And part of the whole process, of course, is determining what is accurate, what is not accurate. And just because something's on an old document does not mean it's necessarily accurate. It could have been written about something even further in the past and not even be available. I ran into one of these recently when I was doing some research about a particular community, and I wanted to know who the first settlers were. And here was a very nice document. It was entitled "First Settlers of the Community" that I was researching. And it turned out it was by somebody who had never lived back in that time period, and in fact was more than 100 years separate from that. And it was like in recollections. No, she didn't have, the author did not have any recollections, but it was it turned out to be about 90%. If there was any historical fact in it, it was more of a novel, of a romance type novel. Okay, so we discover those documents about our ancestors, those records, by searching for them, any place they might be stored. And this becomes the day-to-day activity, if you will, the primary activity of doing genealogy. Today, we're greatly blessed, I would believe, to have a lot of these records digitized and online. Billions and billions and billions of records, but the number of records that are actually recorded online or digitized online is still a very, very, very small number, percentage of the total number of documents that are still sitting out there in paper. And so it's entirely, it's a point where today, if you're doing genealogy in a country like the United States, for example, you can probably find a substantial amount of information about most people, but going back to about 1850. If you lived in some other places in the world, you may not find any digital records at all. You may have to go to a actual library or repository, an archive, or some other physical location to find any records. So there's still a big disparity out there between different countries, but even here within the United States, if you do enough genealogy over a period of time, you're basically going to run out of online resources. So to go back and just summarize, finding and searching these documents is the main activity. Now, you may think that whatever else you're doing in genealogy takes time, but there's nothing at all that gets close to spending the time that it takes you to find the documents in the first place. You just can't do that. It's not instantaneous. Now, there's some things that have developed over the past few years that make this a lot easier. And one of those are online record hints or record matches or whatever that have been developed by the large online genealogical programs like Family Search and Ancestry and MyHeritage and Find My Past and a few others that have developed this technology. The accuracy of those varies, and it varies within the same program. Some of the things they find are very accurate, and some of them are not. You might get 5,000 returns, and maybe 2 of them are the correct person, or you might get the correct person with one name, with his name or her name, and have 200 people with exactly the same name and all be very closely look like they're the same person, and they're all from different places or different times or whatever. So they're a help, they're an assistance, but they don't completely replace the process that we have of locating and reviewing and searching through the documents. So finding a source for the documents, for example, finding tax records or land and property records or probate records, That's the first challenge. And then within those documents, we may have to go to the point of looking page by page through the document in order to find the information we're looking for. Now, important to understand that the documents actually do have information about your family. It is pretty rare that people just simply do not show up in any documents at all in the United States. It's extremely rare, even though you may think that statement is, oh, you're going to say, oh, I've been looking for my grandmother for 27 years, or I've been searching all the documents I can for many, many years. The answer is very simple. They may have simply changed their name, or they may have moved into a very unlikely and different place than the one that you're looking for, or any number of other kinds of circumstances. But that doesn't mean there aren't documents that have recorded those people. All you have to really do today to understand that situation about what goes on in today's world is to watch any one of the mystery or police type movies or television or on the internet type programs. And you'll see how many people get found rather quickly by simply computer searches or by looking at videos that are posted. If you want an interesting exercise in understanding the amount of information that's being gathered today, just go on the internet and look for your town and look for camcorders, cameras that are out there recording what's going on in your community. Now, if you live in a sizable community like Provo, you'd find that there's probably 200 or 300 and up to maybe 1,000 of those all over the city. And all you have to do to get recorded is basically to drive through or walk through the city. And you will be recorded dozens or hundreds of times. And that kind of information, you're saying, is that genealogically valuable information? Well, it's information that allows you to find people and find their activities. And if you project that in the past and you start to understand how many documents there were and how many records there were. Let me give you an example of a record that you may have never conceived of. A few years past, many years ago, I was working on getting the initial entry of the records into the Family Research Wiki. When there were a few thousand records, the original seeding of the wiki had about 8,000 records. Now they have over 100,000 entries. And there were about 8,000 when we started. And when I finished and basically began so involved in other activities that I was no longer trying to be involved directly in the wiki, there were probably around 50,000 articles. Now it's more than double that. And what happened back then is that I would say to everybody, well, what about farm organizations as records? They say, oh, where would you get farm organization records? What do you mean? I mean, like co-ops, farm co-ops. And they say, oh, really? I went in and I was able to find a single-spaced page, large 8.5 by 11 page, single-spaced list of farm organizations and in all parts of Utah, just that state, just the state of Utah. So historical documents, you have to understand that when you get past what we call marriage, birth, death, or MBD records or census records, that you get out into documents that could come from any particular place. The person may have been in some kind of professional organization. For instance, lots of professional organizations have licensing bureaus. All of these things have information and have supplied and kept this information. And so part of this kind of development of understanding how to do genealogical research involves being able to, I guess you can say, imagine that certain kind of record might exist and then finding it. And that is what we do and how we do it. So now what we have to do, we record the information in a family tree with a digital copy of the document, if possible. Now, this is really a crucial way of making an advancement. I have people coming to me for consultations every week, week after week after week, and many of them do not have a family tree. They are simply lost. They have no idea, in a sense, how they are interrelated or related to different people. And even if you are so private oriented that you don't want anything out there public about your family, you've got to realize a core issue. There is no privacy for people who are deceased. Dead people don't have privacy rights. So putting somebody's name and the information about an individual who died 100 years ago is basically has nothing at all to do with privacy. Anyone who wants to can discover those people, just as you can. It's no different. Just because you find this individual does not mean that 100 or 1,000 of your other relatives could not have found or will find that same person in the future. So basically, there's nothing that's private about genealogy. Now we're not talking about living people. If it's living people have privacy issues. And we don't put information, generally speaking, on a public tree. But every one of the large websites is basically, if you mark someone living, they're not able to be seen by anyone except you. And so there shouldn't be any concern here. So we need to put that information up there, not just for your own benefit, by the way, because on a family tree like the Family Search family tree, you're almost instantly going to find that you have relatives. And if you do it on a huge family tree like MyHeritage, you may be overwhelmed with the number of people, relatives that they find for you in a very, very short period of time. This would happen to anyone who lives in a kind of a Western European structured society. In other places, it's maybe not so easy, but and some places nearly impossible. But in this society that we have going in Western Europe and the United States and throughout other countries like most of South America and other parts of the world, if you start a family tree on a program like MyHeritage, you're just going to be overwhelmed by the number of people that you're related to, because there's just a phenomenally large. And you're giving that up when you create a private family tree. You're giving up the fact that somebody else may have done all this work before you even get to it. And you need to know, in order to save your time and your efforts, you need to plug it in a sense, into a place like the Family Search family tree that is shared family tree, where the information is not necessarily your tree, it's everyone's tree, and it's going into this universal family tree. And that gives you a better idea of what has been done. And of course, it's very frustrating for some because the information doesn't agree with what you think or what you will be able to find. And you may have some differences with that. But that's, in a sense, a very small price to pay for the time and the effort that it saves from having to redo this. And I'm speaking from personal experience because I started, well, now over 40 years ago, long before there were computers. And I had to spend 15 years before I knew basically what my family, what the research had already been done on my family. And now all I would have had to done to get all that information that I gained after 15 years of work would be to go into the Family Search family tree and plug in my name and maybe put in a couple of living people and connect me back to some dead relatives. So this is the important thing. This is why we're doing this. So now we need to know how to communicate within this world of genealogy. We need to be able to tell people what we've done, and in a way that they don't have to keep doing the same thing we do over and over and over again. So this is an effort, a combined effort on all the people involved in genealogy to say, look, we've done this, and it doesn't have to be done over. Now, and that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who will just ignore all of the fact that all this work has been done and try and do it over again. But it is sort of a tragedy, because there is a very simple way to avoid having that kind of duplication of effort, not just duplication of people. That's an issue within a particular program, that you've got more than one copy of the person there. That's also indicates that there's been a duplication of effort. But the duplication of effort that we're talking about is that somebody who completely ignores family search, or completely ignores ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, and all the other major programs that are out there, and just starts adding in names on their own, on their paper or whatever, and doing research and being frustrated. But and what they find inevitably is that the major part of everything that they do and accomplish has already been recorded and is already known and is already sitting out there on one or all of these programs. So while we do that is we record the place where we found the information so that others can see where the information came from, and if they need to verify that information for themselves without having to spend the time to go research that particular point again. So if I put in a birth date, for example, into a website, I'm going to use Family Search from now on. Family Search, I put a birth date in there, and I don't put in where I got it or how I got it or where I calculated it. When I come to that, I have to do all the work over again. I have to go see if I can find this person and see if that birth date is correct, or if I even have the right person. So this is the essential part of keeping it all up. Now, to clarify the words here, the jargon, if you will, of genealogy, the original record is called a source. That means source meaning where you got the information, the source of that information. And the source is recorded with a citation. And the citation is the formal way that you enter that information and record that information so that others are facilitated in finding and verifying, if necessary, the information that you've entered into your family tree. So most of the family tree programs have a standard way of recording information with a source citation. So you record the source of your information, and you're recording. When you do this, your information lets others in the family know whether the information is accurate and reliable. So I've said many times in the past that once any entry in a family tree, any family tree, on any program, on paper or wherever, in a book or wherever it appears, any reference to an individual that doesn't tell me, historical individual, that doesn't tell me where that information came from so that I can go and verify that information, as far as I'm concerned, it's fantasy. It's imaginary. It's made up. Because I have nothing that ties me down to a real document, a place in history that I can actually see that this person lived and had the name and the dates and the places and the relationships are all verifiable. So if you just start putting in names into any kind of a list, even if, the answer will come very simply in just a minute when I get to it. So the challenge is obvious. And here's the obvious. See, here's what comes up as an error message in Family Search for an individual. It says a missing vital event. That means there's nothing here telling us when these things occurred. And there's no sources attached, which means that this individual, whichever person happens to have this particular notification, is just a name that someone has put in there that we have no idea whether or not it's correct. And so we're just kind of stuck with it. And if we don't, without going back and redoing all of the research that apparently this person did, or looking at trying to find the same records that this person found, we have to go back and redo all that work. So let's say I go through and I find this person, this Ann Morgan person. Great, I found them again. And this time I find that there is a person named Ann Morgan. And I find that, yes, she is in this family. And I put in the information that came from the record. And I also put in the source on the record. Well, then nobody has to go back through that again, unless they decide that this is wrong and they go ahead and try to correct it. Now, that can happen, and that's one of the things that happens with the family search family tree. Okay, so once again, without a source, we're moving into the world of fantasy. There's just no way we're going to be attached to anything that we could call reality. That's our lifeline, our repelling, our saving rope, the rope we're repelling off onto this unknown on. That holds us to the reality of the world and the actual history. And this is something that you can carry on through to your entire the way you conduct your entire thought process in life. And we hear, within a matter of a day, you can hear thousands of messages. And the question is, which of these have some kind of attachment to reality? And they can range from political statements to new diets, and working your way through those without some source attached to it, some way of verifying that information is highly frustrating. And that's what we get into in genealogy if we don't keep working and adding those sources. Now, this is a concept that is different than source citations are usually used in, let's say, generally what you would do for academic research, for example. I can basically do a little bit of academic research and put in a citation to an authority that is a book or a quote from a talk or a class or something, and just say that I did that. And for instance, the standard source citation for a book is that it gives you the author, the publisher, the title, the publisher, the date of publication, and maybe, if you're really lucky, a page number to look at in the book from where the information came from. What is that missing? It doesn't tell me where you got the book. I don't know where you got the book. And I have to go out and see if I can find that same book by the name of the information that you gave me. And that's what's missing. And that's what I emphasize over again, that when you give us a citation, when you give us information about your source, tell us where you got it. If you got it online from Ancestry, say, I got it from Ancestry. If you got it online from the National Archives, say, I got it from the United States National Archives, and give me an address, a URL address, a link to that document. Then I'm not going to spend time redoing the work that you did to find it in the original. Again, telling me that a document came from the United States Archives, for example, is hopeless for me to find it again. If I don't have anything really, really, really specific that tells me where it is in the National Archives of the United States, I am never going to find that document again. It is just, I can't even find my own documents if I don't put that down. If I read something in the National Archives on a National Archives page, and then I click away from it, and I wait a few days, and then I come back and say, where did I get this? I can't even find it sometimes. I can't even find what I did, much less what somebody else did. I know that if I'm working online, that I can work back through my search history on Google and and eventually perhaps find the link back to where I was working. But it's difficult. And if the link for some reason is broken, or my computer is crashed in the process, or something, like I had to erase all my browsing and cookies and things off my computer the last week, then I'd realize that I have to re-put everything back in. Okay, so here's a citation. This is the citation to England births and christenings. And so this is a good example. England births and christenings. It's a database on Family Search. Here's the actual link to the document. This tells me when I looked at that document, tells me about the person that was on that document and the date. So there you go. And so all I need to do to go back to that document is to copy that address, put it in my browser, and click, and I have a copy of that document. Okay, so here's the key. People say, well, I don't know where I got this. Came from my mother. Well, okay, that's it. Personal knowledge, I heard it from my grandmother, and anything else are sources. Let us know that. And then we know where you got the information. We know how, we may say, well, okay, fine. I know his grandmother's since died. Okay. But then we know we may need to go further and try and verify additional sources, additional places that will verify the information that was said. But by telling us that it came from my grandmother, or that it's my personal knowledge, we at least have a starting point. It's not entirely without any idea of where we're going to go start to look for this individual. Now, obviously, after I have spent years and years doing this, that if I know that a person is in a family and that their parents were born someplace, that the child that I'm looking for will probably be born someplace near the parents, or at least we know that the mother was there when the baby was born. And so basically we have ways of narrowing down where we have to look, but then we would still have to go find what records are available for that place and time and that person, and start searching. So this is kind of the process here. So here's a citation to an oral interview. People say, well, this was oral history. Yeah, well, we cite to oral histories. Here's a citation to this, and I've made it bigger. The little blue part is the same as the big letters. So a person was interviewed, was this person, Joyce Chisango, and the birth year estimated year was at 1958, and these are the places this place is where the person was born, and this is the tribe that the person came from. And can we go back to get this particular document? We would have to know a little bit more information. We know where this came from and who it came from, but unless we want to go try and find this person over in Zimbabwe, we're probably not going to be successful. So this is a citation, but now it adds we need one more thing. Where did this get recorded? Where did we find this? Where did we find this document? So even though this looks like it's very detailed and contains a lot of information, it really doesn't tell me, or you or anyone else, where we got it, where I got it. They know where the oral history came from, but we don't know where I could go to look at this same oral history. What if I want more information from this history? So today in the world, if I knew of something really importantly about Family Search, that everything on the website except some information about living people and some other information that's primarily the religious nation from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is searchable on Google. So I could put in all or part of this and probably find where this was pretty quickly, but it would still be helpful if I had the URL of this particular oral history, that I didn't have to go through that process. So here's a citation to a photograph. It says that this particular photograph is here, and over on here on the side, you'll see some information that was put into the memory section of a family search. It said the 12/7/1807, that's right off the headstone. The event place, it tells me exactly where it is. It's added to the album, etc. Now, what about where this album is? Well, the interesting thing is you're only seeing this if you find it in the memory section of Family Search. So adding anything else to this is the link is the place. So you're already there when you're looking at it. So this is a little bit kind of a different thing here. We've told enough about the event place that if I needed to find additional information, I have that. And the fact that it's on Family Search, it means that it's already connected to a person, Joshua Tanner, who may have a lot of other information. So that's why this is this is an adequate. Yes, it is adequate, not inadequate. It is adequate. It works because I'm already here looking at it. The link that we got was back here to Joshua Tanner. And we're looking on Joshua Tanner, and we have a link to this picture, which then connects those two. And then they tell you where the picture came from in exact specific and where the picture was taken. And that's helpful. Now, we could actually get in our car and drive to the William Hartshorne Cemetery in Greenwich, Washington, New York State. And if that still was there, which is possible, then we would be able to find it. Okay, so that kind of clarifies a little bit. So here's this a little bit larger in case you're having trouble seeing what's on the side there. So the image is tagged to the person's page in the FamilySearch.org family tree. When you do that, when you tag the individual in this photo, which is indicated by the name here that's tagged, it says click the image to tag people. Then you can, then that is the connection that gives you where the image, it came from, who was the subject of this image. So here's another citation. This is a citation to a parish register, and here we have it. It's the English Essex Parish Registers 1538 to 1997 database family search, and here is the link directly to that record, and here's the record. Now, granted, we're on this page, but we have to look for the person we're trying to find, so we have to still go down through the entries here. But the fact that two things have happened, that one, we have a direct link to the record, and two, in a better practice would be to attach the digital image of the record as a memory to that person. Now you're saying, well, what if that digital image is already in Family Search? Well, it may be already in Family Search, but and it may be sufficient to have the link, but if that link for some reason goes bad, or the image gets recatalogued or something, which does happen, then it may be once again lost. Or in the worst case, and it happens from time to time, the originators of these particular records all of a sudden decide they don't want to have their records online because they're making money off of selling the images. And so they pull these images off of Family Search or the other websites. So that happens from time to time. And so we're just kind of hedging it by recording every place that we find the information, whether or not it's, and there's this question of duplicate. Do I put in another, if I find this same document, the same image on Ancestry, do I put it and it's a source? And the answer is yes, because it is a different place where we can go to find the same information. So this is, this is kind of the whole idea here. This is a citation of a book that I found on archive.org. By the way, archive.org is probably now the largest library in the world. It's a library, and you can actually check out and read. It's free, totally free, and you can check out and read now. They're up to 36 million books. So 36 million books totally digitized, totally indexed, page by word for word, searchable, and totally available, plus a lot of other stuff. That's billions and billions of other records. So here's a book, Descendants of John Tanner, and you would think, you know, where it's coming, of course, it's now your on family, on archive.org. So you already know where you can find the book because you're there looking at the book. But here they have all the information that you would need to add in order to make it completely and totally available to anyone. One of the things that's on here that you might not be familiar with is it says there's an external identifier. It's sort of near the bottom of the page. It says camera that took the picture of the book. And you'll notice it's interesting. They use a camera, a Canon EOS 5D Mark II, which, by the way, is the same camera I have. But it's, you know, it's basically a 20 megapixel camera. And most of the digitizing that's done today, everybody gets hyper about really having real high digitizing, but that's perfectly adequate. External identifier is the OCLC record number. The OCLC record number is the worldcat.org, WRLDCAT.org, WorldCat, which is the catalog of all the catalogs. The interesting thing here is that this is more information than is necessary, but it's all helpful. And why is that OCLC number helpful? Because you can click there and find a library where the book is located if you actually want to see a physical copy of it. And you can also find a place where you can read it. Now you're already at a place that you can see the entire book and into all the pages and search it word for word when you're on archive.org. So let's look at this citation, and we'll talk about the parts of the citation. So here's the name of the record on familysearch.org. This isn't necessarily the exact document, but it tells you which collection of records on familysearch.org. And you would go into the catalog and put that in, and you could be able to search for this and find the exact same record set. And this is a link to where the record was found. So if popping that or clicking on it will take you directly to the record. This is the name and location of the original record. So it was a marriage in Southwark, Surrey, England, United Kingdom, from the London Metropolitan Archives, England, on a Family History Library microfilm. So that's where that record came from. Well, why is that important? Because maybe you want to go back to that particular archive. Perhaps you're not aware of that. And all of a sudden, you know that there's a London Metropolitan Archive, and they may have more information about your particular ancestors that you haven't found in any other archive. It may very well be that not all the records at the London Metropolitan Archive have been digitized. And so they may have records that you would need to go to London to look at, or hire somebody to do that for you. Or it's very possible that they have their own digital collection with records that are not on Family Search and not on Ancestry and not on MyHeritage and nowhere else. So these are all things that help you with your research and lead you to other places and other things that are not necessarily that simple. And this other point here is it shows you the format of the original copy. That's important because we may find that in later time, this is a digital image of the original Family History Library microfilm, but it may be that at some point in time, they made additional digital images of that particular record that were easier to read or more or clear or whatever. Okay, so here's a citation to a US Census record. And this is the complete citation to the United States Census for 1860. And it's for this particular census record, which is in Omaha City. And so basically, we're looking at a lot of different parts. So let's look at this. First of all, this is the name and the description of the original record. It's the United States Census 1860 database with images family search. This is the familysearch.org link that's right next to it, HTTPS. This is the original information and location. Now, down below, it looks like it's being repeated, 1860 U.S. Federal Census Population Database, and then it has it on fold 3 with no date, citing NAR microfilm publication in Washington, D.C. National Archives. Okay, so here's what it's done, is it's given you another website, which is part of Ancestry.com. It's called fold3.com. And it has this particular record on it. And that's where this particular copy came from. So now we know where this copy came from. And it's citing the National Archives and Records Administration microfilm publication, and they have the number of that. So there we are with having more, like in many cases, more information, but it also tells you that it was from Nebraska Territory and Douglas, and the county was no further was stated, but it was image 16 of 68. So you can go right to the image if you simply have to dig through the census record. If for any reason the link is no longer good. Here's a journal. This is a personal record written by a person. So this is the 1890 autobiography of Ann Pryor Jarvis. And this was a document written by my great-great-great-grandmother, Ann Pryor, who married George Jarvis. And so we have her autobiography. And it says it's an attached memory. So my daughter, Amy Tanner Theriot, has attached this document as a memory, and then has given us the citation. So down below, you see that it starts out with the author, Jarvis, Ann Pryor, and Victoria Josephine Jarvis Miles, who apparently may have transcribed it or sat down and interviewed Ann Pryor for her autobiography. It's in the Church History Library. That's different than the Church Family History Library, and that's in Salt Lake City. And there's the address of it, and it tells you it's in manuscripts 9330, Reel 1, Item 1, and it also on manuscripts 8237, Item 61. With that information, you can go straight to this document. Now, whether it's online is another question. It's probably online because otherwise, unless Amy went to the library and obtained a digital copy of it, it was probably already online, and this is the way that you would go search for it on the Church History Library website. And then it tells a little bit about it and goes on about the information about the autobiography. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that we would like to see on our citations, on our source citations, and recording how and where we're going to get the sources. So here's the title of the work, the location, and the catalog location of the book in the library. Now we're into it's a suggestion. If you are somewhat, I don't know how to call it, you like to have things a little more organized, and you want to have everything cited and as much as possible, every page and every document that you look at, then I suggest a free program like Zotero. Now, Zotero.org is from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And basically, if you go to a web page, this is once again a Google Chrome app and you load it into your computer. It has the desktop app, and you can work it on your phone and all sorts of places. But what it does is anytime you go to a web page, you click that, and it reads the article or reads the document or reads whatever's there on the page and creates a citation automatically for free. And so you can see over here, this is my list of colonial medicine references. And basically I have compiled, or someone, I don't think I did this one. This is not mine. No, that's not mine. This is just an example. Basically, this is a compilation of what it looks like. And then when you click on this, you can create a bibliography automatically, which means you can have an entire list of your sources. So, for example, I'm doing a presentation at Roots Tech 2023, which will not be recorded, but I'm also done in conjunction with that presentation on the great migration of the African Americans from the South from 1915 to 1970. And basically I have a 6-part video series, and I have a handout with it. The handout is a 58-page handout, and it has probably 10 or 12 pages of citations. The bibliography that I did was created with Zotero, and each of those is a citation that is accepted academically as a according to the Chicago Manual of Style. And you can also find locations in the worldcat.org. So if you need to know where a book is or something is kept, this is one place where you can go. Actually, enter your zip code into the record here, and they will tell you the closest library that has almost any item in there, over 2 billion items of information on where to find stuff. It'll also create a citation. So if you find a book or record or document or whatever in WorldCat, which by the way includes stuff from archive.org and from Family Search and from the Family History Library in Salt Lake, and there's Family Search Library now in Salt Lake, or any of the places, this is all in WorldCat, and they will also have a way for you to create a citation. So here's looking it up. So I've looked up this thing on Barrington, Rhode Island land evidence records from 1770. And it's on a microfilm, and it's from the Genealogical Society. And if I want to borrow it, I can borrow it from the Family History Library near Provo, Utah. So I can go down to the Family History Library, and I should be able to find this document. Now, I would also do another search for that document online, because it may be already on FamilySearch.org or on Ancestry or any other place that it might occur. And then there's a location of the copy of the record here from the Family History Library, and tells you where the Family History Library, and it happens to be 37 miles from my current location. And there's the citation. The little quote marks there let you quote it and get a citation. So there we go. And now if I click on that, I got that information. Now I'm going to look and see if it's in the library. And yes, there it was. And here's the digitized copy of the record that I've just found at WorldCat. So if you get frustrated trying to find things in Family Search or in Ancestry or any of the programs, I would suggest using either Google or the WorldCat or archive.org, all three of those, to see if they might be able to locate either more information that you're looking for, or find the documents that you're looking for. I click on that link on Family Search, and there I have the actual document with 869 images on this particular set of documents. By what I can see here, this was a microfilm roll, obviously. Roll number is on the beginning. And here's the document itself that I was looking for. So here's the citation to that particular document. And it was created by Zotero. So all I had to do, I didn't have to write down anything. I didn't have to copy it or any place. I can get this citation, and then I can just copy that directly to where I'm looking. So remember, if you don't have a source, that's equal to fantasy. You're just out there. And you get extra credit points if you know exactly where this castle is, even though they're pretending it's a fantasy. Thanks for watching.